it's Miss Erin. Hi, kids. I have a story for you about kids, but they're not kids like you, not human kids. I'm going to tell you the story of two goat kids. Did you know that baby goats are called kids? Isn't that funny? So I'm telling you the story of two baby goats. But before I do, I want to show you my baby goats.
Their names are Root-Beer and Sassafras, and they love to play. Like human babies, baby goats drink milk. Sometimes goats drink milk from bottles. Listen to my baby goats drinking their milk.
Oh my goodness. They cry when they want their bottles. And they cry very loudly sometimes too.
Listen.
Can you cry like a baby goat? Let me hear you. Oh, I hear you baby goats out there. So, how do you think that goats sound when they are walking? Do they make a trip-trap sound? Trip-trap, trip-trap. Like those three Billy Goats Gruff and the other story that we know? Well, this is what my goats sound like when they're walking in the barn. Their hooves make a noise on the floor. Their feet, their hooves. So let's listen to that sound. Yes, it sounds like trip-trap. So we can say trip-trap, trip-trap. Can you say that with me? Trip-trap, trip-trap. Yeah, it's a sound of goats walking. Now, let's use our hands and pat our legs while we say the words. You ready? Trip-trap, trip-trap. Yes, let's do it again. Trip-trap, trip-trap. Ha! You are ready for our story because you know that a baby goat makes this sound. Ma! And a goat walking might make this sound. Trip, trap, trip, trap. Okay. I'm going to tell you this story using a theater that I made. And see, I have a house and a barn, and I have scenery in the background. I'm going to use this to tell my story, and I'm going to use stick puppets to do that. And then I'll tell you a little bit more later so that you can make your own theater. Okay? So this is a story about two baby goats. One baby goat is named Root-Beer. There's Root-Beer. He likes his sweater. He wears it all the time. Let's put Root-Beer in the barn. There you go, Root-Beer. And his brother, Sassafras. Let's see, Sassafras, put you in the barn too? There you go. And their human kid friend, Frank. Here's Frank. We'll stick Frank right here. There you go. Well, Frank loved his baby goats, Sassafras and Root-Beer, even though they could sometimes get into mischief and cause all kinds of troubles, like goats sometimes do. Well, when Root-Beer and Sassafras would hear Frank playing in the yard, they would cry their baby goat cries because they wanted to play too. So can I hear your baby goat cries? Ma! Said Root-Beer. Ma! Said Sassafras. Well, Frank could hear them crying. Aw, poor Root-Beer, poor Sassafras. You know, even when Frank would take a walk in the neighborhood with his family, he could hear their little goat cries from far away, carried on the wind. Maa, maa. All right, baby goats. Maa, said Root-Beer. Maa, said Sassafras. Aw, it hurt Frank's heart to hear his baby Root-Beer and Sassafras crying, so Frank would run home to the yard. And he would get to the gate and he could hear them coming out to meet him. Remember, I need your help with this. Here they come walking. Here comes Root-Beer. Trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap. Here comes Sassafras. Trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap. There you go. Oh, they're happy to see Frank again. You know, when Root-Beer and Sassafras would get hungry, they would cry for their bottles. "Maa!" said Sassafras. "Maa!" said Root-Beer. Well, Frank would have to go inside and warm their bottles of milk and bring them out to Root-Beer and Sassafras. And they would run around all excited. Here's Sassafras. Sassafras runs around, trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap, all hungry for his bottle. Root-Beer runs around, trip, trap, 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 all hungry for his bottle. They would jump and bounce around, so eager and thirsty for their bottles. Then came a very special day. So this is another day, and Root-Beer and Sassafras are in the barn.
And Frank is in the house.
Because this special day is...
It's Frank's birthday. See, there's Frank at the table. There's his birthday cake. And look, on the counter are 2 bottles. Those must be the baby goat's bottles. Oh, what a special day this is.
So this is what happened on that special day. Root-Beer and Sassafras wanted to be part of this very special day. They were very excited and they wanted to come into the house to see Frank blow out his birthday candles. Well, Root-Beer and Sassafras cried from the barn. Root-Beer said, "Maa!" Let me hear your goat cries. Sassafras said, "Maa!" But Frank and his family couldn't hear them from the barn, so they cried louder. Can you cry really loud? Your goat cries. Your Root-Beer cries very loudly. Maa! Sassafras cried loudly. Maa! But still, they weren't heard all the way in the barn in their stalls. So, Root-Beer found a way to push against the gate and squeeze himself out. And Sassafras, of course, followed his brother. Squeezed against the gate, pushed their way out. Then they went running to the house. You ready? First comes Root-Beer. Trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap. Then comes Sassafras. Trip, trap, trip, trap, trip, trap. And they stood outside the door. They could see Frank at the table with his birthday cake, and they could hear his family singing the happy birthday song. Well, they wanted to join in the fun too. So Root-Beer cried at the door. Let me hear you, little baby goats. Ma, ma. Sassafras cried at the door. Ma, ma. But Frank's family couldn't hear them over all the singing. So they cried louder. Let me hear your loud baby goat cries. Ma, ma, said Root-Beer. Ma, ma, said Sassafras. Well, fortunately for Sassafras and Root-Beer, Frank's mom heard them, and she came to the door. There she is. And she said, "Well, hello, Root-Beer. Hello, Sassafras. Do you want to join in the birthday party celebrations?" She opened the door, and Root-Beer and Sassafras bolted in. You ready? Bolted means they went really fast. So we have to make our goat trip-trap sound really quickly. Here goes Root-Beer. He's bolting in. Trip-trap, trip-trap, trip-trap. Here's Sassafras. Running in, bolting in. Trip-trap, trip-trap, trip-trap. Oh, there they are. Oh my goodness. They were so happy to see Frank at the table with his cake. But then Root-Beer spotted his bottle on the counter by the table. His bottle of milk. What do you think will happen next? You can pause this video and share your ideas and your predictions with your grown-up. Go ahead, you can pause it now. You're back. You have great predictions and ideas about what might happen next in our story about Root-Beer and Sassafras. Well, you remember Root-Beer spotted his bottle on the counter next to the table, and he cried for his bottle. Let me hear you cry like Root-Beer the goat. Ma! Then he went running. Trip, trap, trip, trap. Ready? Trip, trap, trip, trap. But to get to the bottle, he had to jump on the table and then onto the counter. So when he jumped on the table, let's see, smoosh! His two hooves stepped into the cake. Oh no! Oh my goodness. Well, this is what that sounded like. Trip, trap, smoosh. Can you do that with me? Trip, trap, smoosh. Into the cake. Oh, Root-Beer. He got icing and frosting all over his hooves, all over the table, all over the counter, and all over Frank. Oh my goodness, Root-Beer. Next, Sassafras wanted to follow his brother Root-Beer. Trip, trap, he jumped on the table, but then Frank scooped him up in his arms so he didn't step in the cake. Whew! Wow, that was a lot of commotion for Frank's family. What a birthday Frank had. Well, meanwhile, little baby Root-Beer didn't understand what all the fuss was about. I mean, after all, he was with the two things that he loved most in his little baby goat life. And that's his best friend, Frank, and his warm bottle of milk. You're right. And that, my friends, is the end of our story about the adventures of the two baby goat kids, Root-Beer and Sassafras. Well, friends, this was based on a true story that happened to my family. Some of the names have been changed, and well, we didn't have a birthday cake like in our story here. We had a birthday pie, a pumpkin pie. And nobody wanted to eat the birthday pumpkin pie after Root-Beer stepped in it. So we took the pie with the two hoof prints to the chickens. They didn't mind eating that pie.
Yummy, Say the chickens. Mmm.
Oh, and don't worry about the human kid. I'm his mom, and I got busy baking him another pie.
You can make a theater to tell your own story.
I made this one to tell my story about root beer and sassafras, and you can make one too. All I used was styrofoam that came in some packaging. I just taped them together, stuff I found around the house. And then I used popsicle sticks and pictures, photos of my goats. But you can use all sorts of things. Here, I didn't have popsicle sticks, so I found some sticks outside and I used that to make my stick puppets. And look, I drew a goat. And in this one, I drew a barn. So you could do that too, and then you could tell a story with your grown-up. It would be a fun activity to do. In fact, your whole family could join in. So you can make theaters out of all sorts of things. Here's one I made just out of a box. And then if I wanted to, I could decorate the box. I could put a piece of paper or another cardboard piece in the background to make background scenery. So those are ways that you can make your own puppet theater. And I have another one as well. But this one will have to go outside. Here's my flower pot, or my dirt theater I like to call it. And you can do this in the dirt on the ground, or you can fill a container with stick puppets and use paper to draw your background. You can do it in a container like this, a long container, or you can even do it in a flower pot. And I suggest you don't do it when the goats are around to eat your puppets. Grown-ups, you know, this is a great way to work on narrative skills, which is an early literacy skill. This is a child's ability to understand and tell stories and to describe things. Using puppets, like stick puppets, and other kinds of puppets can help children develop narrative skills. They can tell you about the story that they're creating. They can talk to you about the props and the backgrounds. They can use voices and come up with what the characters say. All those things help develop narrative skills. Also, while reading picture books to your child, you can help children develop narrative skills by asking them to describe what's going on in the illustrations or what might happen next in the story, or even to tell you about the story after you've read it. They can retell it in their own words. You know, friends, this is an opportunity to spend time with our families, telling stories, making puppets, and making each other smile. I hope you get to do a lot of that and make some memories. I miss you, my Storytime friends, but I look forward to seeing you again. Bye, friends. Oh dear, they're getting into troubles and mischief again. Bye.
Here are some ebooks to borrow at your library at www.library.car.org. We have a nonfiction story about goats that tell you all about goats. And also about baby goats. They'll help you learn all about baby goats. Then there's the story of the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. This one told by Paul Galdone. A retelling of the 3 Billy Goats Gruff by Mary Finch. Rapunzel and the Billy Goats by Hilary Robinson. Bad Dog and No, Nell, No by Elizabeth Dale. Billy and Goat at the State Fair. Catch That Goat, a market day in Nigeria. The 3 Frilly Goats Fluff. Polly and her duck costume. And this is based on a true story of a blind rescue goat and an angel and her wonderful wheels. And this is based on a true story of a little goat who walked with wheels. Libby Wimbley, Goat Trainer. This is like a first chapter book. And then we have a movie on Canopy, on goat farming. Find these ebooks, videos, and much more at www.library.car.org. And that is the end. Oh wait, that's not the end. This is the end.